What do you think it really feels like? Not to be the hero's girl, but the villain's favorite? Not the princess on the white horse, but the one in silken shadows, the one everyone whispers about and no one dares to touch. Hey, my love, I'm V, and this is Girly Tales, the place where your girly mind gets to live 100 secret lives before you fall asleep. Tonight, you're not the good girl. You're the soft spot of the man everyone fears, the only person who sees the monster and the human in the same pair of eyes. You know his secrets. You hear the plans before they become headlines. You're the one person he lowers his voice for, and the one name his enemies spit like a curse. So get cozy, fix your pillows, let your jaw unclench, and let the world outside your room disappear. Because tonight's story is called Fall Asleep to the Secret Life of a Villain's Favorite Girl. And from this moment on, you're her. The first thing you feel is warmth. Not gentle warmth, not the soft glow of morning sunlight through gauzy curtains, but the heavy, smoldering heat of coals banked under ash. It clings to your skin, thick as breath, and for a few seconds you lie still with your eyes closed, not entirely certain whose body you're in this time. Then the smell hits you: burned resin, iron, old smoke trapped in stone. You open your eyes. The ceiling above you is carved obsidian, veined with faint silver like frozen lightning. Candles burn in iron sconces, their flames steady despite the draft that snakes in from somewhere unseen. The light reflects in the black stone overhead, soft and orange like 100 tiny wavering sunsets. You're on a bed, if you can call it that. The mattress is thick and surprisingly soft, piled with dark furs and heavy woven blankets stitched with red thread. One of them has slipped halfway to the floor. Your bare toes curl in the chill of the air. You're not in your own room. You're not in your own life. You're in the fortress of the man everyone in the kingdom calls a monster, the Lord of Ash, the king's enemy, the villain of every fireside story, your guardian, his favorite girl. You sit up slowly, the furs sliding into your lap, your heart beating a little too loudly in your ears. The room is big, but not grand in the way a palace might be. Everything here is practical, solid, made for endurance rather than show. Dark wood, black stone, iron. On the wall across from the bed hangs a massive map, one you know almost by heart. The kingdom, split down the middle by a river that looks in ink like a long old scar. On one side, the royal crest, a golden stag crowned with stars. On the other, the sigil of the man who raised you, a ring of thorns circling an empty crown. Your fingers find the pendant at your throat before you even remember you're wearing it. It's the only piece of jewelry you sleep in. You never take it off. A small disc of obsidian, smooth on one side, etched with that same thorn ring crest on the other. You rub your thumb over it, feeling the tiny grooves cut into the stone, and exhale slowly. Right, you remember. You are 17 years old. You live in a fortress carved into the side of a mountain, overlooking a valley that has known almost nothing but war for the last decade. The man the world calls a villain has been your protector since you were 8. And whether anyone else believes it or not, he has never been cruel to you. Not once. You swing your legs over the edge of the bed and wince as your bare feet hit cold stone. Someone has already laid out your clothes on the low chair by the wall. Woolen stockings, a soft linen shift, a dark blue dress, and the leather belt with your knife already sheathed at the hip. You recognize the careful efficiency of that gesture. Luca, he always remembers. As you dress, you listen. The fortress always wakes before you do. It hums under your feet, a low murmur of footsteps, clinking metal, distant shouts from the training yard 3 levels down. Somewhere far below, in the caverns that serve as stables, horses stamp and snort. Above, on the outer wall, you know there are sentries pacing, their boots scraping stone. You tug the dress over your head and tie your hair back with a simple strip of cloth. No jewelry, no ribbons. This is not a place for vanity. This is a place for surviving. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the polished metal plate that serves as a mirror. There you are, not beautiful in the way ballads describe princesses. No halo of golden curls or eyes like polished jewels. Your hair is dark and straight, your eyes a strange shade that looks different in every light. Sometimes brown, sometimes green, sometimes almost gray. There's a faint scar across the bridge of your nose from the time you tripped on the stairs and hit the edge of a shield stand. Your face is yours, not extraordinary, not unforgettable, just you. You're used to it. You're used to being the shadow in the corner of rooms full of great men, the quiet observer by the hearth while strategies are whispered over maps and scarred fingers trace borders. You move to the window, one of the narrow slits cut through the fortress wall. Dawn is still clinging to the horizon, a band of pale blue above the jagged teeth of distant mountains. The valley below is a patchwork of frost-silvered fields and blackened earth where old battles scorch the ground so deep that nothing grows there anymore. Beyond the valley, far beyond your sight, lies the capital, the palace, the king, the man whose face you see in your dreams but whose name you have never been allowed to speak with certain questions in your voice. You press your palm to the cold stone beside the window. It's an old habit, a secret ridiculous one, as if by touching the fortress itself, you might feel the distant tremor of the kingdom's heartbeat. Nothing answers. There is only stone and frost and the faintest echo of some long ago warmth that has nothing to do with sunlight. Behind you, the door creaks. You're up, a familiar voice says softly. You turn. Luca stands in the doorway, leaning one shoulder against the frame like he always does. He is your age, or close to it, though it's hard to be sure. His hair is dark and too long in the front, always falling into his eyes no matter how often he pushes it back. There's a fresh bruise along his jaw, blooming purple against his tan skin. Training again? You ask, nodding toward the bruise. He grins. You should see the other fellow. I'm sure he's fine. I'm less sure about your skull. You worry too much, he says, stepping into the room and closing the door behind him with his foot. We're summoned. Your stomach tightens. Now, he nods. Breakfast? In the war room. Of course, the Lord of Ash never eats without a map in front of him. You take the back stairs. You always do. The main staircase is a grand, sweeping thing that descends through the center of the fortress like a spiral river, its stone steps worn smooth by generations of boots and armored feet. Sunlight spills down it from the upper windows, catching on banners and polished breastplates. The back stairs are narrow, steep, and cold. They twist through the bones of the fortress, past storage rooms and shuttered alcoves, past the barracks where soldiers snore in exhausted heaps, and the armory where the smell of oiled steel hangs thick in the air. Your footsteps echo as you descend. Luca is a steady presence just behind you, close enough that you can feel his warmth at your back. You're quiet, he says after a while. I'm always quiet, quieter than usual. You hesitate, one hand on the next stone step. You could say, I dreamed again. You could say, there was a crown and blood on the floor, and someone calling my name in a language I don't remember learning. Instead, you shrug. Just tired. Bad dreams? He presses, not unkindly. Just dreams, you mutter. He lets it go. You're grateful. You reach the door at the bottom of the stairs, a thick slab of oak reinforced with iron. Two guards stand there, spears upright. They nod when they see you, and one of them pulls the door open. Warmth hits you first, then the sound. The war room is a storm of low voices, the rustle of parchment, the clink of mugs against the long wooden table that dominates the center of the space. The walls are lined with shelves, every one of them packed with scrolls, ledgers, books, and maps. So many maps. Maps of your kingdom, yes, but also of neighboring lands, of seas you've never seen, of mountain ranges drawn in careful lines. At the far end of the table sits the Lord of Ash, your guardian, your monster, your something else, if you're honest with yourself. He wears no crown, no bright cloak, no unnecessary ornament at all. His clothes are simple, black and gray, leather and wool. The only fancy thing about him, the ring on his right hand, a silver band set with a single dark stone. His hair, shot through with iron gray, is tied back at the nape of his neck. His beard is close cropped. His eyes are the color of old embers, not quite orange, not quite brown, something in between. Those eyes lift the moment you enter. They always do. Everything else in the room seems to fade just a fraction when his gaze finds you. Good, he says, his voice roughened by years of shouting orders over battlefields. You're both here. Come. You and Luca take your usual places, not at his right hand. That seat belongs to General Morn, a thick-shouldered woman with scars crossing both cheeks. Not near the senior officers clustered along the long sides of the table. You stand behind him, slightly to the left, where you can see the map spread across the wood, and also the expressions of everyone else in the room. Report, the Lord of Ash says. A young scout, barely older than you, steps forward. His cloak is still dusted with frost. His fingers tremble slightly as he unrolls a smaller map and places it atop the larger one. The king's army broke camp 3 days ago, he says. They're moving east. Scouts on the ridge counted at least 500 men, maybe more. Those are just the visible forces. We suspect they're finally ready to stop playing at this. General Morn cuts in, her voice brisk. 10 years of skirmishes, 10 years of sending expendable troops to die at the edges of his empire so he doesn't have to see the blood. He's done, my lord. He's coming personally this time. He means to crush you. The room hums with tension. The Lord of Ash is very still. Only his fingers move, tracing the inked line of the river bisecting the kingdom. He won't come himself, he says at last. Kings rarely do, unless they're forced to. He'll keep his distance until he's certain the ground is safe. He's never liked mud on his boots. There's a faint thread of something in his voice. Not quite contempt, not quite something else. You feel it like a splinter under skin. But yes, he continues, this is a shift. He's finally realized that a war of attrition will not break us. His attention flicks to you, just for a heartbeat. He forgets that some of us learned patience at his knee. Your chest tightens. Sometimes he says things like that, words that hang in the air like smoke, hinting at rooms you're never invited into. You can taste questions on your tongue, sharp as copper. You swallow them down. This is where he's crossing. The scout points to a bridge marked on the map. The river Nera, near the old ford. Our eyes confirm. Luca leans in slightly, his shoulder brushing yours. That's close, he murmurs. Too close. The Lord of Ash exhales. All right, he says. Then we make it costly. He begins to speak, issuing orders. Shift this regiment. Send that scout. Move supplies from the lower stores to the eastern outposts. The room responds like a machine, gears clicking into place. You listen. You always listen. Nobody ever told you to. You were meant to sit by the fire, perhaps, or sew by the window, or walk in the small walled garden and pretend not to hear. But from the first time they let you stand in this room, you realized something. You are good at this, at seeing patterns, at remembering names, movements, which commanders can be trusted to hold a line, and which ones falter when the enemy charges. You are good at imagining the way people move on the map, as if they were pieces on a game board. You don't speak, but the Lord of Ash has never once asked you to leave. After the council disperses, after the officers file out and General Morn strides off to drill the eastern troops, the room empties. Luca lingers only long enough to catch your eye. I'll be in the yard after midday, he says under his breath. Come see if my skull's still intact. You manage a small smile. If you can stand upright, I'll be impressed. You'll be very impressed then, he says, and slips out the door. You and the Lord of Ash are alone. He doesn't look at you at first. He stands there, hands braced on the edge of the table, staring down at the map as if he can will it to change. He looks tired. You notice it suddenly. Not in the way he stands, he is as straight-backed and solid as ever, but in the faint hollow beneath his cheekbones, the new silver threading through his hair since the winter began. You clear your throat softly. My lord? He glances up. There it is again. That subtle easing in his features when he focuses on you, as if the lines around his mouth remember how to soften. How do you read it? He asks. You blink. Read what? Their movement. Your pulse jumps. He has asked you for your opinion before, but never so directly. Usually it's a quiet thing, a low question while someone else is talking, a sideways nudge with his eyes. Now he's looking straight at you. You step closer to the table. On the map, tiny carved markers stand where armies are currently camped. Dark pieces for his forces, pale ones for the king's. They're not trying to break through the western pass, you say, slowly. Too slow, too exposed. And they're not moving along the southern road. There's no cover there, and they know we hold the high ground. If they're heading for the old ford, they want a quick crossing, minimal resistance. Is that what they'll find? He asks. You look up, meeting his gaze. No, you say quietly. Not if you're there. His mouth twitches, not quite a smile. Flattery doesn't suit you, he rasps. It wasn't flattery. He holds your eyes for another moment, then nods. You're right, he says, about the road and the pass and his need for speed. He reaches for one of the pale markers and moves it a fraction of an inch. He'll bring siege towers, of course. He always did have a fondness for height. He forgets that the higher you climb, the farther you fall. There, another shard of something sharp and hidden. You gather your courage. My lord, you say, your voice barely above a whisper. How well did you know him? Before? The air changes. He straightens slowly. For a moment you think you've overstepped, that he'll clamp down like he always does when certain topics drift too close. Instead, he studies you. You're not a child anymore, he says at last. Your face grows hot. I know that. I forget sometimes, he murmurs. You were small when you arrived. All curls and stubbornness. You refused to take that pendant off once I gave it to you. Your fingers curl around the obsidian at your throat. The king, you say, pushing gently. Did you know him? He looks past you toward the slit of a window. I knew the man he was, he says. I don't know the man he is now. War changes everyone, especially those who watch from thrones. Were you friends? The word feels heavy and wrong on your tongue. His jaw tightens. We were close, he says. Once. Then why? Enough, he says sharply. You flinch. His expression softens almost immediately. I'm sorry, he says. The apology sounds strange in his mouth, like a word he doesn't use often. It's not a story for today. For when, then? You ask, your throat thick. He regards you quietly. When it needs to be told. The day unfurls. You spend the morning on the outer wall, walking the length of the ramparts with a stack of parchment and a piece of charcoal, copying the positions of the watchtowers and marking which ones need repair. The wind is sharp, snapping at your dress and stinging your cheeks. From up here, the world feels both enormous and very small. You can see the valley spreading out like a gray-green quilt, the faint thread of the river cutting through it. You cannot see the capital. You cannot see the palace where you sometimes imagine a very different 17-year-old girl might wake up in a sunlit room with silk sheets and a maid to brush her hair. You do not know why that thought makes something in your chest shift uncomfortably. In the afternoon, you find Luca in the training yard just like he promised. The yard is a broad circle of packed dirt ringed by dummies wrapped in straw, and wooden racks holding practice weapons. Men and women move through drills, the air filled with the thud of blades against shields and the grunt of exertion. Luca is in the center of it all, sweat-darkened shirt clinging to his back, wooden practice sword in his hand. He's good. You've known it since you were children when he first arrived at the fortress. Thin and weary after the Lord of Ash pulled him from a burned-out village and gave him a choice: starve or stay and learn to fight. Luca chose to learn. Now he moves like water, poured into the shape of a blade. You watch from the railing as he dodges a strike, pivots, and disarms his opponent in 3 quick motions. He's breathing hard when he looks up and sees you. His grin is immediate. Told you I'd be upright, he calls. Barely, you shout back, but your lips curve. He tosses the wooden sword to a passing soldier and jogs toward you, wiping his forehead with the back of his arm. Did he ask you again? Luca asks, as soon as he's close enough to keep his voice low. Ask me what? What you think about the king's movements? He leans against the railing beside you, bumping your shoulder lightly with his. You hesitate. Yes, you say. And? And I told him. You say. A little. And did he listen? Luca's eyes are bright. He moved a marker. You say. Luca whistles. That's practically a declaration of faith, coming from him. You think of the way the Lord of Ash looked at you over the map, weighing your words as if they mattered. You feel the heat rise in your cheeks again, and hope the wind disguises it. Be careful, Luca says suddenly. You blink. Of what? Of how close you get to all this, he says, gesturing vaguely to the fortress, the war room, the invisible line that runs straight from your guardian's plans to the dead strewn across battlefields. He trusts you. That's rare and dangerous. He trusts you too, you murmur. Luca snorts. He trusts me with a sword, not with his secrets. There's no bitterness in it, only quiet acceptance. You look out over the valley. Do you ever wonder what it would be like, you say slowly, to live somewhere that isn't a fortress or a burned village? Somewhere that isn't a chessboard, you mean? Luca asks. You nod. Sometimes, he admits. Then I remember I'd probably be dead without this place, and I decide I can be philosophical later. Philosophical, you echo, amused. Big word. I learned it from you, he says. Don't tell anyone. Your laugh is small, but real. The moment is fragile, suspended like a glass ornament over stone. You don't know, yet that you'll remember it later, with painful clarity. You don't know how many of these quiet, almost peaceful days you have left. You only know that when the Lord of Ash summons you again that evening, there's something different in his eyes. The summons comes at dusk. You're in your room, unpinning your hair, when there's a knock on the door. It's not Luca. Luca doesn't knock like that. Quick, impatient, like he's half a breath from just walking in. This knock is measured, formal. Come in, you call, smoothing your dress. One of the older servants opens the door. Mira. She's been here as long as you can remember. Her hair gone from brown to silver in that time, her hands still quick and precise. The Lord wants you in his study, she says softly. Your stomach does a small, inexplicable flip. Now? Now, she says. Her eyes linger on your face for a moment, and there's something gentle there. You look well, child. Thank you, you murmur. You follow her through the fortress corridors, past tapestries that depict battles from a generation ago, men on horses, banners snapping, swords raised. As a child, you'd trace the embroidered threads with your fingers and ask Mira, which figure was the Lord of Ash? None of them, she'd say. These hang from before his time, before yours. The study is on one of the upper levels, tucked behind a heavy door that rarely opens for anyone but him. Mira leaves you there. You stand for a heartbeat, fingers hovering near the latch, suddenly aware that your pulse has started to race. You've been in his study before, of course. He taught you to read there, by the fire. His voice a low rumble as he guided your fingertip along lines of ancient ink. He corrected your writing posture at that desk, patiently turning your wrist so you didn't cramp your fingers. He put a knife in your hand for the first time in that room and taught you how to hold it, not as a weapon, but as a tool. Still, something feels different tonight. You open the door. The Lord of Ash stands by the window, hands clasped behind his back. He's taken off his outer coat. His sleeves are rolled up, revealing corded forearms. The room smells faintly of ink, leather, and the smoke from the small fire in the hearth. Close the door, he says without turning. You do. For a moment, there is only the crackle of flame and the soft hiss of wind leaking through the window's edges. You sent for me, my lord, you say, your voice steadier than you feel. He turns. There's no armor between you and his gaze now. No table, no maps, no officers watching. Just him and you, and the expression on his face that you cannot quite name. It's time you knew, he says. Your fingers curl around the pendant at your throat. Knew what? You ask, though some part of you thinks it already knows. Who you are, he says quietly, and why the king will cross a river in winter to see you dead, if he ever learns the truth. Your breath catches. You feel it, the world shifting, as if you've been standing for years on a stone that now suddenly tilts, revealing that it was only the tip of something much larger buried beneath. You've always told me who you are, you say weakly. You gave me my name. I gave you one of your names. He corrects. He gestures to the chair by the hearth. Sit, child. Your legs carry you forward, wooden and numb. You sit. He remains standing, as if he doesn't quite trust his own body to hold still if he rests. When you came to me, he begins, you were 8. You remember that much. You nod. The memory is foggy at the edges, but you remember the journey, the cold, the way the horse's movements made your teeth chatter in your skull, the weight of a cloak too big for your shoulders, the feel of a hand, large and gloved, firm at your back. But I knew of you long before that, he continues, before you were born. How? You whisper. Because your mother told me, he says. The word lands between you like a dropped stone. Mother. You have so few memories of her. The smell of lavender, the sound of a lullaby hummed under her breath, a feeling of arms, gentle and strong, lifting you. Her face is a blur when you try to recall it, as if your mind has smudged the features to protect you from something. My mother, you ask, the words scraping your throat. You knew her? I loved her, he says. Your heart stumbles. You look at him as if you've never seen him before. The Lord of Ash, this man who commands armies, who stares down kings, who has more scars than some soldiers have fingers, looks suddenly like someone much younger, wearing an older man's body. My mother, you say again, slowly, loved you? She loved many things she shouldn't have, he says quietly. Me among them, and a king, very much. Your blood turns to ice. You know now what he's going to say before he says it. You've known it in some silent buried place inside you for a very long time. Your mother was queen, he says. The fire pops in the hearth. Your heartbeat roars in your ears. And you, child, he adds, are the king's blood. You stare at him. The words exist, but they do not feel real. Queen, king, blood. You've heard the stories, of course. Everyone has. The old songs about a young queen who vanished, the rumors about a child who died, the whispers about betrayal in the palace long before the first battle was ever fought at the kingdom's borders. You never put yourself there. You never imagined that the ghost at the heart of those stories might be you. No, you say, but it comes out thin. That doesn't make sense. If I were if I were a princess, someone would have raised you in silk, he asks, one eyebrow lifting. Paraded you at court, taught you which fork to use for which course? Yes, you say helplessly. Wouldn't they? If they'd wanted to keep you safe, perhaps, he says. But they didn't. You swallow hard. What happened? You whisper. He exhales, long and slow. I will tell you all of it, he says. But understand, this is not a bedtime story. It doesn't end with everyone laughing and kissing in gardens. I know, you say. Your hands are trembling in your lap. You curl them into fists. Tell me anyway. He nods once. In the early years of his reign, he says, the king was not yet the man he is now. He was charming, bright, reckless. A shadow of something passes over his eyes. We grew up together. We hunted in the same forests, trained with the same swords, shared secrets, dreams. You were friends, you say, softly. We were brothers in all but blood, he says. And then he married your mother. Images flicker in your mind that you know are not really yours. A garden, a woman laughing, a crown catching sunlight in a spray of jewels, a man young and proud, smiling like the world exists only for him. She was, he says, and his voice shifts, kind, clever. She asked questions in the council chamber that no one else dared ask. She wanted the kingdom to be more than a war machine, more than a monument to one man's power. What happened? You ask again. He looks at you. She chose me once, he says. And then she chose him, and then she chose you. The room tilts. I don't understand, you say. She and I were close before the marriage was arranged, he says. We thought, he breaks off with a bitter huff. It doesn't matter. The king wanted her. He always got what he wanted. I was sent to the border. She stayed. They married. For a time, it seemed all right. We all played our roles. And then, you whisper, and then she wrote to me, he says. Letters, dozens. She was lonely, afraid. The king grew harder as power settled into his bones. He trusted fewer people. He listened only to those who told him what he wanted to hear. She told me things she could not tell anyone at court about the way he ruled, the way he looked at the world, the way he looked at you. Your heart lurches. At me, you ask. I wasn't even born, he finishes. You were, by then, or nearly. She was with child. There were questions in the palace. His eyes hold yours, unflinching. Questions about whose you were. Questions about whose you were. The words sit between you, heavy and humming. You feel like someone tilted the floor a few degrees and forgot to tell you. The chair under you is solid. The fire is real. The Lord of Ash, this man you've known almost your whole life, stands there with his sleeves rolled up and his voice steady, telling you your life is not what you thought it was. You lick your lips. What questions you manage. His gaze doesn't waver. Your mother and I had been close, he says. Too close, the court whispered. Once the king turned his smile toward her. Even after the wedding, even after the crown, there were those who watched, who counted months, who made sums of glances and half-finished sentences and invented scandals to fill the gaps. He exhales through his nose. When she quickened, he goes on. Some said the child was mine. Some said it was his. The king laughed at first, then he didn't. A little pulse starts up in your throat, fluttering against your collarbone. So, whose am I? You ask. The question feels naked and small. Truly. He doesn't answer right away. He crosses the room instead, going to the shelf where he keeps a row of worn leather-bound books. From between two of them, he pulls something wrapped in cloth and tied with a thin cord. He brings it to you. Before I tell you what I believe, he says quietly, you should hear what she believed. Your fingers clumsy. You untie the cord. Inside are letters, dozens of them, their edges softened by time. You see your mother's handwriting, loops and curves, ink gone brown with age. The top one is already open. Your guardian nods toward it. Read. Your eyes skim the lines. My dearest, he grows stranger every day. The first time he felt the child kick, he laughed and called it a miracle. The second time, he frowned and asked if I had seen you lately. His counselors are poison in his ear. They whisper that your shadow stretches too close to my chair. They breathe the word betrayal like incense. You blink hard. The words, blurring. I know what they are implying. I know what he is beginning to fear. So I will say it again as many times as I must. This child is his. She is his, by blood and by fate. But he will not see it if he keeps looking at her and seeing you. You swallow past the tightness in your throat and look up. She wrote that? Your voice cracks. She wrote many like it. He says, she never lied to me, not once, not even when it would have been kinder. You look down again, your eyes catching on another line. If anything happens to me, promise me you will take her. Keep her away from his enemies and from his fear. Raise her where she is not a question, but a person. Your fingers press so hard into the paper, your nails leave half-moon marks. My mother, your voice is a whisper. She wanted me here? She begged me, he says, not for herself, for you. But why, you ask? Why send me away at all if I was his? Why not? Why not make him see? Because kings rarely see anything they don't wish to, he says, and because fear twists love into something ugly. He loved you, in his way, but he loved his throne more, and he was terrified that one day someone would look at you and say, she looks like the wrong man. You flinch. The wrong man. You look at your guardian, at the scar running through one eyebrow, at the way his hands are strong and steady even when his voice is not. And you suddenly see it, the faintest echo of your own face, not enough for certainty, enough for suspicion. So he, what? You ask? Decided to get rid of me? He decided to get rid of me. The Lord of Ash says, you were merely leverage, a threat, a question he could not stop asking himself. The court factions made sure he never forgot it. Your stomach churns. What happened? You whisper. His eyes darken. The night before you were to be formally presented at court, he says, your mother sent one last letter, shorter than the rest. No poetry, no pleasantries, just 4 sentences. He holds your gaze. She wrote, they are going to move against you. They are going to move against her. Come at once, or there will be nothing left to save. The fire cracks loudly. You feel very cold. I rode like a madman, he says simply. From the border to the capital in 3 days. I left half my guard in the dust. I arrived to locked gates in a city buzzing with rumors that the princess had taken ill, that she was gone. His jaw works. I didn't believe it. You know this part, not in detail, but in ghost form, in nightmare flashes of cold corridors and hurried footsteps, and a hand clamped over your mouth while someone whispered, don't make a sound, little one. The Queen's maid found me, he says, smuggled me through servant passages to the old nursery. Your mother was waiting, wearing a plain cloak instead of her crown. You were in her arms. You were furious. Shadow of a smile touches his mouth. You always hated being moved when you were comfortable. Your eyes sting. I remember, you whisper, surprised to find that you do. Not clearly, but as a feeling. Warmth, lavender, a heartbeat pressed to your ear. She put you in my arms, he says. She kissed your forehead, and she said, take her. He will never forgive either of us, but he may stop looking for her if he thinks she's already dead. Your breath leaves you in a shudder. She staged it, you ask. My death? She allowed them to stage it, he says. A small coffin, a fast funeral, no open viewing of the body. The palace hallways whispered of fever, of tragedy, of a broken king. And you just left? You ask, your voice shaking. With me? I argued, he says. Of course I did. I wanted to take her too. She refused. Why? Your voice cracks. Because someone had to stay and temper his worst impulses, he says. Someone had to keep the kingdom from devouring itself while he raged. And because if we both vanished, He would tear the world apart looking for us. Tears blur your vision. She chose him, you say, the words tasting bitter. He kneels in front of you then, the Lord of Ash, this man who commands legions, goes down on one knee like a knight in a ballad and rests his hands lightly on your shoulders. She chose you, he says firmly. Do not ever twist it into anything else. She chose the path that gave you a chance to live. You squeeze your eyes shut. And the war? You ask hoarsely. Did it start because you took me? Not immediately, he says. At first, I was just gone. An inconvenient friend with too many questions, suddenly out of sight. But rumors travel faster than horses. Someone saw us on the road. Someone recognized the maid who rode with us. Someone remembered that your coffin was too light. You open your eyes. The king thought you'd kidnapped me, you say slowly. The king thought I'd stolen his daughter, he says, or his mistake, or both. He demanded I return you. I refused. I told him I would not hand a child back into the hands of a man ruled more by fear than love. That, you say faintly, seems like something he wouldn't like. You always did have a gift for understatement, he murmurs. And so, you whisper, he made you the villain. He needed one, he says simply. Kings always do. Someone to point to when the people asked why taxes were high and sons were conscripted and fields were burned. It's him, he could say, the traitor, the usurper, the Lord of Ash who stole my blood. He squeezes your shoulders gently. I did steal you, he says. Gladly, I would do it again 1,000 times. You can't speak. It's too much. Too many pieces snapping into place at once. Your name, the one you've worn like a second-hand cloak for 10 years, feels suddenly thin on your skin. Who am I? You ask. The question escapes before you can stop it. It sounds small and lost in the big stone room. He looks at you with something that might be sorrow and might be pride. The name your mother whispered as I rode away with you was Aaliyah, he says, Princess Aaliyah of the River Crown. The name I gave you when you arrived here, wrapped in wool and shaking with fever, was Mirael. Little miracle. You swallow hard. Then which? Both, he says. All of them. You are the king's blood, whether he admits it or not. You are the queen's choice. You are my ward, my favorite girl. His mouth quirks. You are not one thing. You never were. Something hot and painful twists behind your ribs. You stand abruptly. He lets his hands fall. I need time, you say, to think. Of course, he says. There's more, you say, realizing it. Isn't there? You said, it's time I knew. Like the timing mattered. Like this army moving means something more. It does, he says quietly. We intercepted a courier this morning from the capital. Your heart stutters. What did it say? He studies you for a long moment, then goes to his desk. From a drawer, he pulls a folded piece of parchment, sealed with wax. The royal crest, stag and stars, has been broken already. He offers it to you. Handshaking, you take it. There, in the king's sharp, elegant hand, are the words, to the man once called my brother, I am done with ghosts. I am done with lies. The girl you stole from my palace will be returned to me, or I will raze your mountain to the ground and salt the valley in front of it until nothing grows for 100 years. Choose quickly. Below that, in a different, finer script, a line added by someone else. Our spies report the king has learned the truth. The princess lives. You read it twice, 3 times. The room feels too small suddenly. He knows, you whisper. He suspects, the Lord of Ash corrects. He has known enough to use you as an excuse for years. But now someone has told him more than rumor. Someone close to me. Close to you? You echo. Yes, he says. We have a traitor, or a frightened man with a price, or both. You stare at the letter. If he comes, you say slowly, he won't just be coming for you. No, he says. His voice is very calm. He'll be coming for you. You don't remember leaving the study. One moment you're there, the king's threat burning in your hand. The next, you're moving. Down corridors, upstairs. Mira calls your name at one point. You don't answer. You turn down a side passage and end up in the small walled garden that clings to the protected inner courtyard. The only patch of green in a fortress of stone and ash. You sink onto a bench. The winter bare branches around you clutch at a cloudy sky. You press your fingers to your temples. Aliyah, your mother whispered. Mirael, he named you. Thief, the king wrote. All the stories you've been told crack open like old plaster, revealing something raw and complicated underneath. You think of the girls in Mira's tales, the ones she used to tell you when you were very small and afraid of storms. They always knew who they were. Lost princesses with birthmarks shaped like crowns, chosen ones with names written in prophecies. You have no mark, no prophecy, just a new and terrible understanding. To one man, you are stolen. To another, you are saved. To both, you are useful. You don't know how long you sit there. Long enough for the cold to seep through your dress. Long enough for your breathing to slow. You're not sure which comes first, the sound of footsteps or the sense of someone watching you. You don't startle when Luca appears. He doesn't speak right away. He just lowers himself onto the bench beside you, leaving enough space that you don't feel crowded. Mira said you looked like you'd seen a ghost, he says, after a moment. You look worse than that. A laugh bursts out of you, sharp and helpless. I think I am one, you say. A ghost. He tilts his head. Want to talk about it? He asks. You consider lying. You don't. I'm the king's daughter, you say flatly. His eyebrows climb. Well, he says, that's not the sentence I expected. You wait for him to laugh. He doesn't. He watches your face, sees the way your hands are shaking, and his expression shudders into something more serious. You're not joking, he says. You shake your head. He blows out a slow breath. Start from the beginning, he says, and don't leave out the parts where you're definitely still the same person you were yesterday. So you do. You tell him about the letters, your mother, the queen, the coffin, the ride, the king's threat. Your voice shakes. Once or twice you have to stop and stare at the dead rosebush in front of you until the world comes back into focus. Luca listens. He doesn't interrupt except to ask quiet questions. When you're finished, he leans back, spreads his hands, and says, well, that explains why he looks at you like that. You blink. Like what? Like you're the only thing in this place that proves he didn't lose everything. Lucas says, I always thought you must be some sort of penance he was paying, or reminder, something important. Didn't think it was that important. You stare at him. That's your reaction? You demand. You find out your friend is secretly a princess, and you just say, oh, that tracks? He shrugs. You think it changes anything? He asks. You're still you, the girl who steals bread from the kitchen at midnight and thinks no one notices. The one who corrects Morn's map, reading under her breath. The one who cannot walk past a crying child without stopping. Royal, Blood doesn't scrub that out. Your throat goes tight. What if it means something? You whisper. To them. Out there. To him. The king. What if he wins and drags me back and I become a pawn? Luca supplies. A prize? You say bitterly. A symbol? A reminder that he can take back whatever he thinks he's owed. He leans his elbows on his knees. Then, don't let him win, he says. As if it's that simple, you mutter. Simple? He huffs. No, but maybe clearer. Look, princess. Don't call me that, you snap. Fine. Mouse. He amends. You've been reading his maps for years, watching his strategies. You see things we don't. He knows it. Why do you think he keeps you in that room where everyone underestimates you until you open your mouth? I don't open my mouth, you say. Maybe you should, Lucas says quietly. You look at him. He looks back, steady and unflinching. For years, he says, you've been the invisible piece on the board, the one no one accounts for because you're quiet and small and sitting by the fire with a cup of tea. Except you're not. You're watching. You're learning. And now the man who made all this mess is coming to your doorstep to finish the story he started. Your heart bangs against your ribs. What are you saying? You whisper. I'm saying, he says, maybe it's time you stopped letting other people decide what you are in this war. The war council the next morning is different. You feel it when you step through the door. The air hums with a harsher tension. The officers' faces are sharper, drawn. The map on the table is cluttered with more pale markers than you've ever seen in one place before. They've moved fast. The king's army has reached the river Nera. You take your usual place behind the Lord of Ash. He glances back at you, just a flick of his eyes. But in it, you read a question. Are you all right? No. You are not all right. Your entire world has been turned inside out. But you nod anyway. Later, his attention returns to the council. The scouts confirm they've set up camp. Here, and here, General Morn says, tapping 3 points along the riverbank. Siege engines in tow. They're building rafts. Looks like they mean to cross at first light in 2 days. They send a rider. One of the captains adds. He holds up a parchment. The same threat you read last night. The same lines, copied in another hand for the council's benefit. When he reaches the final sentence, the girl you stole from my palace will be returned to me. Murmurs ripple around the room. Some of the officers look at you. Not openly, not for long, but they look as if suddenly you are not just a shadow in the corner. Shame crawls hot up your neck. Suggestions, the Lord of Ash says. Send her away, someone says immediately. To where? Another scoffs. He has eyes everywhere. She's safer here than on the road. Safer, a third voice snaps. With his entire army marching on us for her sake, we should send a rider with terms, offered to negotiate, or return her. The last 2 words drop into the room like stones. Silence follows. Every eye darts to the Lord of Ash. His jaw flexes. No, he says. The captain who spoke flushes. My lord, I only meant. I know what you meant, the Lord of Ash says. His voice is very calm. That's how you know he's angry. And I will tell you what I told him 10 years ago. I will not hand a child back to a man who sees her as an accusation. You stare at the back of his head. He called you a child. He's wrong. You are not. Not anymore. But if we do nothing, General Morn says, cutting across the rising murmurs, we'll be crushed. We might bloody his nose on the way down, but make no mistake, my lord, we cannot hold against the full might of his forces on open ground. Not indefinitely, not with winters stealing half our supplies while they ride with fresh stores from every loyal province. Then we don't fight on open ground, he says. And do what? She demands. Hide in the mountain and wait for him to starve us out? You look at the map, at the river, at the narrow bend where the old ford lies, a shallow crossing hemmed in by steep banks and dense woods. A thought slips into your mind, quiet as a mouse, bold as a shout. Before you can talk yourself out of it, you find that your feet have moved you forward. The king isn't coming for a fortress, you hear yourself say. He's coming for a story. Every head turns. The Lord of Ash looks at you, truly looks, as if he's seeing you for the first time in this room. You swallow. Explain, he says. Your hands are cold. You wrap them around the back of a chair to keep them from shaking. He's built this war around you, you say, forcing your voice to stay steady. The traitor, the usurper, the man who stole his child. Even if you defeated him outright, even if you somehow scattered his army to the winds, his people would still remember that story. It would live longer than any of us. You'd always be the villain in their songs. A muscle jumps in his cheek. You think I don't know that? He asks softly. I think you've accepted it, you say, and I think you shouldn't have to. The room is very quiet. You take a shallow breath. If this is about me, you say, then let it be about me. If he wants to end the story he started, let him do it face to face. No more letters, no more armies, just truth. General Morn's eyes narrow. You're suggesting parley, she says. Yes, you say. At the old ford, neutral ground, you, him, and me. The words leave your mouth and hang there, shimmering. He'll never agree, one of the captains scoffs. Why would a king stoop to? He'll agree, you say, because he loves a performance. Because he wants to look merciful in front of his men when he takes back what he thinks is his. Because he won't be able to resist the chance to stand on higher ground and look down at the man who defied him. You know him. You add to the Lord of Ash. You said it yourself. His eyes search yours. This is madness, General Morn says. We'd be handing him everything he wants. And what is that, you ask? Her, she says bluntly. He wants her. He wants to be right. You counter. More than anything, he wants the story to end with him as the wronged father and you as the cruel thief. I'm saying, what if it doesn't end that way? What if he has to look at me and see more than a symbol? What if his soldiers see their king threatened not by some shadowy Lord of Ash, but by a girl who asks him questions he doesn't want to answer? Questions like, the Lord of Ash asks quietly, your heart hammers, like why a father would turn his kingdom into a battlefield because he couldn't bear the idea that someone else might have been loved. You say, like why he's more afraid of his people, knowing he doubted his own blood than he is of their sons never coming home. A flicker of something like pride crosses his face. And if he simply cuts you down where you stand, General Morn demands, if he pulls you from that riverbank and parades your corpse as a martyr to his wounded pride, then it's no worse than what happens if he storms this fortress, you say, surprising yourself with how calm you sound. At least this way, I choose where I stand. No one speaks. You can feel every pair of eyes. You wish vaguely that your hands would stop shaking. At last, the Lord of Ash turns away from you and looks at his officers. Leave us, he says. My lord, Morn begins. Leave us, he repeats. They go, reluctantly, glancing back at you as if they're not sure you'll still be there when they return. The door closes. You and he are alone again. He says nothing for a long time. He just looks at the map, at the river, at the narrow bend where the old ford lies. You would go to him, he says at last. Not a question. Yes, you say. You would stand within bowshot of his men and trust him not to take you. No, you say. I would stand within bowshot of his men and trust myself to speak before he does. His mouth twists. You have your mother's recklessness, he murmurs, and your stubbornness, you say. Something like a laugh huffs out of him. You sound very sure of yourself, he says. I'm not, you admit. I'm terrified. But I'm more tired than I am afraid. Tired of being a story other people tell. Tired of knowing that if I do nothing, more people will die pretending they understand why. He turns to you fully. He looks older than he did yesterday. But there is also something lighter in his gaze. I swore to your mother I would keep you safe, he says quietly. Safe, you echo. Or alive, he flinches. Those are not the same thing, you say, softer now. You've kept me alive. You've kept me small, hidden, a secret in a fortress full of ghosts. If I walk down there as Aaliyah, the king's daughter, maybe I die. But if I stay up here as Mirael, the quiet girl in the war room corner, how many others die for me instead? His hand flexes on the edge of the table. Outside, the wind rattles at the shutters. Finally, he nods. Very well, he says. We'll send terms for parley. Relief and terror surge through you at once. But hear me, he adds, and his voice is suddenly steel. If anything seems wrong, if his archers shift, if his horse snorts, if he breathes too loudly, I will tear the sky down before I let him touch you. A shaky smile tugs at your mouth. Understood, you say. Dawn at the old fort is a gray, trembling thing. Mist clings to the river, turning the world into a faded painting. You sit astride a small, sure-footed mare, the reins damp in your gloved hands. Luca rides at your left, the Lord of Ash at your right, General Morn just behind. A small honor guard fans out around you, armor quiet, banners furled. Across the water, the king's army waits. You see them through the mist, ranks of men, shields catching what little light there is, horses stamping. The river, shallow here, glides between you, more suggestion than barrier. At the center of the opposite bank, a figure in bright steel sits on a pale horse. Even from this distance, you know it's him, your father. You had imagined this moment. As a child, when Mira whispered court stories, you pictured a giant, a monster, a hero, a stranger. What you see is a man, not young, not old, a face lined by sun and strain, a crown that seems heavier than gold should be, eyes sharp, assessing, a little too bright. When you reach the agreed upon point, the place where the riverbed rises into a gentle, stony shelf, your guardian raises a hand. The column halts. The king does the same. For a long, strange moment, the two of them simply look at each other across the water. Old friends, old enemies. You feel the weight of their shared history in the space between their gazes. Then the king nudges his horse forward. He rides down the slight slope into the river, water licking at his boots. Your guardian does the same. They meet in the middle, where the current tugs at their horses' legs but does not drag them away. Neither speaks. You urge your mare a few steps closer until you are just behind and between them, a triangle in the mist. The king's eyes flick to you. They linger. He frowns. So, he says, and his voice rolls over the water like distant thunder. You brought her. The Lord of Ash's jaw tightens. She is not a package to be hauled about, he says. She is a person. She came. Those sharp, royal eyes narrow. At your command, no doubt, he says. At my choice, you say. Your voice sounds small and high in your own ears, but it carries. The king's head snaps fully toward you. You feel his gaze move over your face, taking inventory. Your hair, your eyes, the set of your mouth. You resist the urge to shift in the saddle. Well, he says after a moment, you resemble her. You know who he means. Your mother. Do I resemble you? You ask. The corner of his mouth twitches. You sound like him, he says instead, jerking his chin toward the Lord of Ash. The air is tense enough to snap. Your letter, you say, because if you don't start, you never will. Threaten to destroy an entire valley to get one girl back. Not just a girl, he says. My daughter. The word slices through you. So you admit it. The Lord of Ash says softly. The king's nostrils flare. I admit that she was born under my roof, to my queen, while my ring was on her finger, he says. In the eyes of the gods and the law, that makes her mine. You stole her. You lied to me. You watched me mourn a coffin filled with stones. I watched you consider putting the right child in that coffin. Lord of Ash says evenly, do you deny it? Silence. The river moves around your horse's legs, tugging at leather. I denied it for years, the king says at last, to my council, to myself. I told myself I had never been so consumed by fear that I would consider such measures. Then the rumors came of a girl in a mountain fortress, of a man who built an army around a secret. And I realized, whether I had or hadn't, you believed I would. She believed I would. His gaze pins you. Do you? He asks. You hadn't expected the question. Do you believe your father capable of killing you to protect his pride? You think of the letter. I am done with ghosts. I am done with lies. You think of the fields burned in his name, the sons who never came home, the taxes that squeezed the valley until it bled. You think of the man who rode 3 days without sleep because a queen asked him to save her child. I don't know what you would have done, you say, honestly. Back then, I was a baby. I only know what you are doing now. And what is that? He asks, his voice deceptively mild. You're willing to burn what's left of this kingdom to prove a story about yourself, you say. That you are the wronged one, the only one, that everyone else is a traitor or a fool. His eyes flash. You speak boldly for someone whose life has been bought with my soldier's blood, he snaps. My life was preserved by his defiance, you say, nodding toward the Lord of Ash. By my mother's courage, not by your mercy. His cheeks color. You speak to your king, he says. I speak to my father, you reply. The word hangs there. Father. You see it hit him like a thrown stone. He recoils almost imperceptibly. Do you want me back? You ask quietly. As a daughter, or as a trophy, you can parade through your shattered cities and say, look, I was right, she was mine all along. The traitor did steal from me. Whispers ripple through the ranks gathered on both banks. You don't look at them. You look at him. His face is strangely empty. What difference would it make? He asks. You would be safe, honored. You would live in a palace instead of a fortress. Your children would never see war. If you can wage 10 years of war over a rumor, you say, what will you do over an insult, over a prophecy, over a dream? No stone wall can keep that kind of fear out, not even a palace. Something flickers in his eyes. For a moment, just a heartbeat, you see the man beneath the crown, tired, haunted. You think wildly he's lonely. Then the moment is gone. You have his tongue, he mutters, and your eyes, you say. The Lord of Ash shifts in his saddle but says nothing. So, the king says, you refuse to come. Yes, you say. He arches a brow. You refuse the crown, he presses. The power, the safety, all because you're fond of this pile of black stone and the brigand who runs it. You look at the fortress just visible up the slope behind you, at the smoke from its chimneys, at the banners snapping in the cold wind. You think of Mira humming in the kitchen, of Luca laughing in the training yard, of the Lord of Ash kneeling by the hearth with ink on his fingers, teaching you your letters. It's my home, you say simply. Of course I'm fond of it. Of them. And if I order my archers to fire? He asks, his voice turning colder. If I take you by force, will your fondness stop their arrows? Your mare shifts nervously. You feel, more than see, the Lord of Ash tense beside you. Maybe not, you say. But you'll have to do it in front of your men, in front of mine, in front of the scouts who will carry this story to every village that's lost a son to your fear. You'll have to explain why the king who wept over an empty coffin now spills the blood of the girl who climbed out of it. His jaw tightens. He had to, you'll say. You go on, your voice soft but steady. She reminded him of his mistakes. He couldn't bear it. That's not a song they'll sing very long. Silence drops like a veil. The king stares at you. At last, he laughs. It's not a pleasant sound. You are dangerous, he says. You and he, you could undo everything I have built. What have you built? You ask, genuinely curious. Fear, ashes, graves? He flinches again. You press. I'm not asking you to fall to your knees and beg forgiveness, you say. I'm not asking you to love him again. Or me. I don't even know if I want that. You take a breath. I'm asking you to stop, to turn your army around, to go back to your palace and look your people in the eye and tell them you chose peace when you could have chosen destruction. You ask the world, he says. I ask my father, you say again, to be the man my mother believed he could be when she married him. The mist seems to hold its breath. The king's hand, holding the reins, loosens, tightens, loosens again. On the far banks, armor clinks, horses shift. The river runs on. Finally, he speaks. I cannot undo what has been done, he says. I cannot call back the dead. I cannot erase 10 years of songs. No, you say. But I can decide, he says slowly, what the next 10 years sound like. You don't dare breathe. He looks at the Lord of Ash. At dawn, he says, my army will begin to move. Your stomach drops. Not forward, he adds. You look up. West, he says, back to the capital, to the work that must be done if this country is to remain whole, after all I have asked of it. The Lord of Ash's eyes narrow. And us? He asks. What becomes of us in your new song? The king considers. The people need a villain, he says. They always will. It makes their lives easier, thinking someone else is to blame. I can't take that from them, but perhaps... His gaze returns to you. Perhaps the villain can live in a fortress instead of a story, he says. And perhaps the princess can stay where she chooses, rather than where people think she belongs. Your fingers cramp around the reins. You would let me stay? You ask. He smiles. It's a sad thing. I lost you once, he says, by clinging so tightly to how the world was meant to look that I didn't see how it felt. I will not grab again. a tightness you didn't know you were holding in your chest eases. Then go, the Lord of Ash says roughly, before you change your mind. The king's eyes linger on you. If you ever wish to see the palace, he says, come as my guest, not my prisoner. You don't answer. You can't. Your throat is too full. He nods as if he expected that. Then he turns his horse, rides back through the water, climbs his bank. His officers cluster around him, shouting questions, disbelief on their faces. He raises a hand, and the shouting dies. You watch as, slowly, like a great beast turning in its sleep, the army begins to shift. Not forward, away, back. You sit there until the mist swallows them, until the last glint of armor disappears. Only then do you realize your guardian is watching you. Well, he says softly, you've done it. You let out a shuddering breath. I don't know what I've done, you admit. You've ended a war, he says. With words, you think of the river, of the men on both banks, of the fires that will not be lit over bodies tonight. Not ended, you say, turned, maybe slowed. Songs take time to change. He smiles, the lines at the corners of his eyes deepening. Spoken like a daughter of both a king and a strategist, he says, come, let's go home. That night, in your small room with the obsidian ceilings and the narrow window, you lie awake. The fortress is quieter than you've ever heard it. No one trusts it yet. Everyone is waiting for the sound of marching feet to return. You turn the pendant at your throat between your fingers. On one side, the thorn ring crest of the man who raised you. On the other, where the stone is smooth, you imagine another sigil. A stag, a crown, a river. You are not one thing. You are not a lost princess in a neat story. You are the girl who walked into a river between a villain and a king and asked them both to be something more than the world insisted they were. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters. Inside, your breath slows. Tomorrow, there will be questions, doubt, the long, slow work of unlearning fear. But for tonight, you are just a girl in a bed, in a fortress that is finally, maybe, allowed to be a home instead of a hiding place. You close your eyes. Somewhere far away in a palace you've never seen, a man removes his crown and sits alone in a dim room, listening to the quiet he's never let himself hear before. Somewhere very near, in a study lined with maps, another man runs his fingers over a river on a page and thinks of a baby in his arms, furious at being moved. Between them, there is you, Aaliyah, Miriel, the villain's favorite girl, the king's secret daughter, the one everyone underestimated. You breathe in, you breathe out, and finally, you sleep.